Have you had courageous conversations in the boardroom, and what's your experience with that with your own boards?
We did engage in what we actually call a courageous conversation, a conversation that was to be led by our CEO. I joined as the chair of our Corporate Social Responsibility Committee, and we worked directly with one of our major affinity groups. And given what had occurred in June, we decided that beginning with our African American cohort was probably the best approach. But this came after my decision to test just how committed I felt my board and management leadership really was to this issue, because I'd seen a statement from our CEO. I felt that the board needed to be engaged as well. I think it rose to the level of board engagement. And so I have to say reluctantly, but quite affirmatively, I felt that I needed to lean in, and I did. And so I suggested that a letter co-authored by the board and the CEO be the path for opening a conversation with our employees, with our stakeholders, to state more than a position, but a willingness to be more proactive in the space. And I was a little concerned about whether or not my fellow board members would see me in a different light, because I'm a long-term board member. I've had these colleagues for many years, and our conversations have focused on governance. But this was the first time we were speaking to what we had identified as a core value, which was equity and inclusion and diversity. To my absolute delight and surprise, it was the board chair who leaned in, who was willing to say, I think that Rosa's suggestions are worthy of consideration. And so that's what resulted in the decision to move forward with these courageous conversations. We did that. We were able to achieve candor. There was an open dialogue. It was uncomfortable. For me, it was painful. There is a burden that comes with being the person who's willing to speak up, and through your ethnicity and through your personal experience. But I felt that it was a necessity, and to be joined and supported by the other members of the board, to see the commitment of the CEO through this initial courageous conversation was extraordinarily uplifting. But I'm still focused on making sure that we take the information and the feedback that we got and we translate it into something that is meaningful. So I've gone from statement to action, and now I want to see some change.
We had set up a conversation that was just scheduled for the members of the Black Employee Resource Group that turned out to also include over 1,000 people. The conversation was set up literally overnight, and we had 1,000 people plus join the conversation, many of our executives, and it really had a very huge shift in how the executives in Samsung looked at and kind of felt this issue, because people came to the conversation authentically. They came with tears. There were people talking about the times they got pulled over by police and the fears they had. And it was one of those conversations that blew the whole organization away. And it also, I think, highlighted for this very Korean-based company that's in a very homogenous country, that these are huge issues. And so we've had some great follow-on actions from that. And to Rose's point, it wasn't just the conversation, it was also the actions that have been taken since then.
To increase the recognition that actually having diverse perspectives on a board makes a difference, makes a huge difference. There is a value proposition there. This is not a social movement. This is a way to enhance your bottom line and your business.
can you please address how to have courageous conversations on this topic on a board without any people of color on the board? And let's just be clear, the super majority of boards in America, especially public ones, have no people of color on the board. And so there is no representation who people can self-identify with, right? And say, that's my neighbor, that's my colleague. So how do our, I call them white brothers and sisters, or people who are not Black, facilitate these conversations on their board when they don't have anyone to look to carry the torch?
If they begin by taking the necessary steps to do the self-education around how these issues have surfaced, and they begin to look at their organization, if they seek help and assistance from others. And let me just, as an aside, because we had this conversation, it is, I think, appropriate, depending on the nature of your relationship, to reach out to those people within your constellation who might have some sensitivity. So if you've got friends who are Black, if you have friends who are Asian, if you have friends who are Latinx, and you want to have a conversation about what that experience is like, to help educate yourself, I think that's a very important step. And then you look at it through the governance lens. How do these issues affect things like executive compensation? What committee should this be discussed in? Are you looking at your employee base? Does the employee base reflect the communities where you conduct business? And if not, why? Have you not expanded the network? And please do not tell me, because I do not want to hear how difficult it is. I've heard that for much of my career, and I was so gratified a week or so ago during a very candid conversation with some colleagues within the Executive Leadership Council, where one of the speakers said, "It is not difficult, it is different." And that fundamentally is what it underscores why these conversations are so important.